Welcome back, everyone, to Figuring Out the Formula. I'm your host, Kyle. I'm here with Chandler and Patrick, as always. Cheers to a great race weekend in Austria. Austria was something different, but before we jump into the actual racing that went on during it, we have something to announce. One of our buddies right here on the show, Chandler. Congratulations. Yep, that's you.
Hey,
Get bang
everybody.
in the chat.
Chandler is now an engaged man. Mary Margaret decided to make an honest man out of him. And
That's right.
I know the two of us and the rest of our followers, except for maybe Jeff, offer nothing but our best to you guys. Nachi's questionable, but Jeff, we'll see. No, I'm just kidding.
I told Jeff to save the date. I said May 4th of 2024 before I knew about the scheduled calendar next year. And Jeff's response was May 4th, 2024. Sorry, I'm getting my tires rotated that day.
Yeah. May the 4th be with you.
That's
But,
it. No.
Now that we're done with those, we're going to move straight into the Austrian Grand Prix. So what we're going to do is, I know this podcast is coming out a little too late. Well, Chandler was celebrating his engagement by going to the land of Jamaica. Some people may have heard of it before. Some people might not have. Well, he had a nice little vacation, and I went to where dreams are made. I went to the Midwest. I don't know whose dreams, but someone's dreams somewhere.
Summertime Chi-Town, right?
Yeah. I went to Chicago, Iowa, Wisconsin. Basically, I went to the land of corn, the field of dreams, if you will. But yeah, so we're a little late on Austrian Grand Prix, and I understand that. We're going to go ahead and do a double packed weekend. So this podcast is going to be shortly followed by the Silverstone British Grand Prix podcast. It's a great thing for you guys, you listeners, because you're going to have 2 days going to work where you get to listen to our voices. So hope you don't crash. Practice and qualifying, they were pretty boring. We're going to skip practice because there was no real drama or anything before the Austrian Grand Prix. Keep in mind, this is Red Bull's home race. It's the Red Bull Ring. Well, qualifying, like I said, uneventful. We move into Q1. Out in Q1, we had De Vries, Magnussen, Sargent, Zhou, and Yuki. The usual suspects. I mean, it's just what you expect at this point in life. It's you get what you pay for, and they don't pay for shit. So we move into Q2, Chandler, and there's a little bit of a surprise in there. The first name I'm going to read who is out. I know Pat's going to be pissed when I say this, so that's why I'm talking to you, Chan. Checo. Checo was out in Q2 yet again.
And the thing about it is this with the Austrian Grand Prix, that's now 3 Q1 or does not make it out of Q2, 3 Q2 exits or earlier in a row. So, I mean, he's haven't even seen the last stage of qualifying for now 3 sessions. It's just what's going on. I mean, we'll see later on and we'll talk about the weekend, but he kind of figures it out. Like you got the race pace versus qualifying pace. How can he not get his car into Q3? I mean, he's literally driving the most close thing to a true rocket ship we've seen in Formula One in the last 10, 15 years. And he can't get it out of Q2 for one lap times. It's just.
Well, Pat, wasn't he sick or something on Thursday? Wasn't Checo sick?
He had like some kind of stomach bug or something and took a day off, but it wasn't anything serious. He was fine.
You were there?
He was fine. Yes, I was there.
I was holding Checo's hair.
I was there. Yes, I was holding the bucket for him when he wanted to puke. Like, he was fine.
Checo was out in Q2. Moving down the list, Bottas was out. Oscar Piastri, Ocon, and George Russell was out. It's kind of a hodgepodge of people. Like, you don't think some of these people should be out in Q2, but then again, the numbers, like the times are pretty close from 1 all the way down to 15. It's like, well, it's just survival of the fittest at that point. Who's going to cross the line right before time expires, that kind of thing. So moving into Q3 though, that was what?
I just have to pause to say, Patrick knows. His roommate just walked shirtless into the pantry to grab some.
Oh, God. He's so mad too. You can.
You can see on his face. He's just.
Well, let's keep it going.
Yeah.
So moving into Q3, like we said, Q1, Q2, the practice sessions, all boring as hell. Q3 was no different. Q3, it ended up being Max Verstappen on the pole, Charles Leclerc second, and then third was Carlos Sainz. Something I thought was cool was Lando Norris actually was in P4, which this is the first real time that we've seen McLaren actually compete. And these are all high-speed corners and stuff like that. So it's not really suited to McLaren's car. So I was really excited to see the sprint race moving forward once I saw that Lando had qualified P4.
Yeah, we're starting to see the upgrade a little bit here of and you know what? Before this was after the Canadian Grand Prix, before the Austrian Grand Prix, Mika Hakkinen went on the record and said McLaren will be competing with Red Bull in terms of pace, and everybody just laughed at him. And at the very least in qualifying, Lando puts up P4 out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, well, you know, it's not competing with Red Bull, but maybe. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. People were still laughing at him. I mean, it's like, bro, that's out of pocket. That's like last episode, Pat projected Charles Leclerc to finish higher than Max Verstappen, or higher than any other driver other than Max Verstappen. Like, no, that's a horrible prediction. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to happen. But luckily for everybody else, this was just the qualifying. There was a sprint race. So the sprint race actually was action packed. It wasn't like, what was the first sprint race of the year? Where was that?
Baku. Was it Baku?
Yeah.
And that was awesome. That was a great sprint race. I remember, like, honestly, I would have rather watched that twice than watch the race one time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but this race was no different. Like, the sprint race was pretty cool. We didn't know if it was going to be pouring rain or if it was going to be dry. Well, the race ended up being like the track was wet, but it wasn't too bad. So, like, a lot of people, I think everybody started on intermediates.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving from there, that's when like the tire strategy came in. Like, when are you going to pit? Are you putting on new intermediates? Are you that kind of thing? Pat, on lap one, your second favorite team or your first favorite team's bench warmer, I'm not sure how you want to put it, AlphaTauri. Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri bend it right into the gravel on lap one. What are you surprised at this point anymore of what they're doing?
I honestly, nothing with that team in general surprises me. I think Tost is done giving a fuck because he's retiring at the end of the season.
Retiring, or
he said he was retiring. Those are his words, not mine. De Vries, he's probably out of F1 because he quite generally just sucks. And then Yuki, you know, he's still got potential, but doesn't really have any guidance left at this point. And coming out of turn one, you know, you just kind of get a clusterfuck as you've ever seen, where you get, you know, Max and Checo, they had beef in the sprint race, coming out of turn one, and then Yuki in the actual race, he gets pinched by like 4 different people and then ends up in the gravel like 3 turns later, which, I mean, there's nothing to do about it anymore.
Yuki, like you're saying, like he didn't stand a chance at Pat. I don't even remember. There was like 4 cars in front of him, all side by side. And Yuki's like, yeah, I'm going to go to the right line, you know, the very right side of the track, and try to pass all these people on a corner that, you know, it's sharper than 90 degrees. It's dude, you're not making that corner. And he immediately locked up his brakes and then had contact. Valtteri Bottas had contact because Yuki was trying to force the issue, broke a wing and all this stuff like that. Then the next corner, like there's a straightaway, the next corner, Yuki with a broken end plate on his wing, way less downforce because his thing's broken, decides to still push the issue. And then he ended up going right into the gravel and had to ride the gravel basically the entire turn.
Yeah, I think drivers a lot of the times just like, oh, there's damage to my car, and then they just try to drive as normal. and 99% of the time it just doesn't work out, and they end up flying off the track. And it's just like, what I don't understand their logic at that point. I don't know if it's just the adrenaline still kicking in, but it's like, you just told yourself you have damage, so why are you driving like you don't?
Yeah, exactly. And that was infuriating to see, not only him having damage in the first place, but him going into the gravel secondly. That caused a safety car. Why was that a safety car? There was no debris on the track. I don't know if they thought he was going to get stuck and immediately just deployed the safety car. But as 3 seconds later, the TV showed him riding around the track. It's like, well, if he's out of here, at the very most, there should have been a VSC if there is debris. What are we doing with a full safety car? That didn't, I don't.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. I mean, like, generally with gravel traps, you have a bunch of gravel that'll fly onto the track. But in this instance, because of the way that turn is constructed, 3 or 4, depending on how you view the track, it's, I mean, the gravel is just going to get pushed outwards. There's almost nowhere for it to come back on the track unless you somehow hit the wall and then come flying back, which you're dead.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe they saw like pieces still coming off his car or something like that.
No, because they called the safety car before the camera even showed him on track.
Yeah,
like,
and
it was almost instantaneous safety cars. Like, well, he's not fucking stuck. He's not on fire. None of this shit's happened. They showed the track later. There wasn't anything on the track, and if there was like little tiny pieces of carbon fiber. It's like a VSC. A marshal can run out there and pick that shit up by hand. What are we doing?
It was a quick trigger finger for what it was.
Yeah, it just the past couple of episodes of figuring out the formula, we've talked about consistency, and we have not seen that all year from the FIA.
No.
I mean, we talked about it last episode. You never know what's going to happen, whether it's a safety car, VSC, double yellow. Like, you just have no idea anymore, and that's not right. The other thing that's not right is, Chandler, these drivers are calling each other out. They're not even focused on driving. They're focused on upholding the rules from others during the race. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? What is something that aggravated you with like the drivers trying to police each other during the race? Like, what were they policing each other about?
Really, what it all comes down to is track limits. And in the past, and I will say that the FIA in general, or at the very least the stewards, probably, I will say this year have been more strict about it than they have in the past years. But what we've seen in years past is that Austria is usually the number one place where people get popped. And we noticed, and I guess this was in the back of the driver's minds, because every lap, like, we're cutting away to go on radio, like, love my boy Lando, but Lando was like narrating Lewis's lap because he's off at turn 9, he's off at turn 10, he's off at turn 12 again. Like, I mean, and all these drivers were doing it. None.
I know Lewis was bad about it. Lewis was trying to call. He couldn't pass Checo to save his life, and every lap, and every lap Lewis is saying, "Oh, he's off a turn. Are we checking? Did you guys say something?" And finally, like, Toto came on the radio and was like, "We know the car's slow, Lewis. Please just drive." And then Lewis didn't do it one more time. So
yeah, and I mean, we got to the end of the race, and it was like 1,200 violations that were like reported. So, not sure that, obviously that's not every single, like, that's not the drivers are reporting it all. It's like, obviously there's some people in the garages who are watching other teams and seeing it. Or
wait a second, mid race, we have to make a pit stop. Let's pull right into Pat's paddock. Let's get a good time here with Pat's paddock. Hopefully we get a good stop. Pat.
All right, boys, welcome into a very great and intuitive Pat's Paddock for our new viewers. So this race, the big kind of talking point was track limits. Now, what are track limits? Track limits are very basic. It is the white lines that go all the way around the track. In Formula One, there's a set of rules for exceeding that, and I'll talk about 2 different scenarios that you typically will see inside a race. Now, during qualifying, if a driver exceeds the track limits, which means all 4 of their tires go outside of the track, 1 tire is in, that counts. If you don't have one tire in, your lap time gets deleted. We saw that in qualifying with Sergio Perez, who thought had qualified second in Q2, but his lap time got deleted for a violation and he was bumped down to P11. Now, during a race, obviously drivers are trying to push the limits of their car. Now, in the process of this, they may go over the lines, but you can't just keep doing that without receiving some kind of penalty. Now, in Formula One, you will get 3 warnings for track limits for exceeding them. On that third warning, as we discussed earlier in the season, you will receive a black and white flag for unsportsmanlike conduct. Upon the 4th violation, you receive a 5-second time penalty. A 5th violation incurs a 10-second time penalty. And then after that, upon the 6th violation, the counter essentially resets. You get 3 more essentially warnings, and then you get more penalties. Generally, you don't really see drivers do it more than 4 times. But in this race, as Chandler said, we had 1,200 different violations to review. And so it got pretty hairy for the stewards. Those are usually going to occur when a driver is just driving by themselves. But there's actually a second scenario where drivers during an overtake will actually go off the track. In this instance, there's actually kind of a gray area. If a driver overtakes off the track and exceeds track limits, they're usually deemed to have gained an advantage by doing so. And what will happen is either A, they then will have to give up the position to whoever they overtook as soon as possible in a safe manner, or B, if they just decide not to do that, then they also get assessed a 5-second penalty. Now, in recent years, there actually used to be a lot of controversy with track limits because the FIA used to have a very odd system of enforcing track limits at certain turns, but not others. A great example to watch would be 2021 Bahrain. Turn 4 was just very inconsistently enforced or not enforced. And then actually before the 2022 season, the FIA finally was like, okay, the white lines are the white lines. You're either in or out.
It's 4 tires, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just like you can go outside the lines because you can, but you can't have all 4 tires outside the white lines completely. Like as long as they're touching that white line, whatever wheel is on the inside, whether that's your right or left, it doesn't matter, whichever turn you're making. As long as that's still touching the line, you're good, right? Even if you're off the track.
Right. And this will apply on turns and straights. Like we've seen instances of people trying to overtake with DRS and then they'll drive off into the grass to try to get around, which you cannot do. If you get forced off the track, that is a different story, which the stewards usually will review that and see if, you're ahead or you're behind and then judge that accordingly. But generally the drivers are just doing it because they're trying to push too hard. And so we saw that a lot in previous years with inconsistencies. It's recently been pretty strictly enforced. And then also along with the overtaking penalties, those were kind of misconstrued where drivers would essentially just wait after they completed their, I guess cheating overtake, if you want to call it. And they would wait until right before a DRS zone and then brake really hard so the other person would pass them, but then they would get DRS, which is honestly just completely against the sporting of racing. And so that was actually recently outlawed as well. So that they would have, you would think, pretty straightforward rules, but the drivers just this week couldn't get it under control.
I don't know if it was the drivers this week or the cars, because this is the second year with the new car and maybe they're learning how to take full advantage of the lateral grip. So the more lateral grip you have, obviously the faster you are through the corners. Well, if you can use as much space as you can, why not? But the problem becomes the black and white flag with track limits. It's equivalent to a running back or a receiver running a route on the outside of the football field. They catch it 5 yards outside the field in the out of bounds and then run back into the end zone and catch a touchdown pass. Like that's you're not supposed to be there. That's not fair. You can make up a lot of time and running a route that way. So that's the equivalent. It's cheating if you go outside those white lines. Some people hate the rules. Some people like it. You know, it's based off the track or whatever. Like, because the Red Bull Ring, they're, like I said earlier, they're fast corners. So if your car can do it and still make the turn, some people say that you should be allowed to. Well, I think it takes more talent and more mechanical skill, I guess, to stay within those lines while still maintaining the most speed that you can.
The drivers were complaining about it. And, you know, I did hear a couple things in post-race interviews about, you know, because it is a corner that's going downhill pretty sharp. And it's a basically 90-degree turn. So it's a pretty hard corner. But I mean, you have that all over the calendar. Yeah. And some people were saying that, oh, the drivers can't actually see the white line or something, but it's really no excuse when you're one of the best 20 drivers in the world.
I was literally just thinking, like, if you're the top 20 drivers in the world, you should be able to stay within the white lines. Even if that means suffering a little bit of track time, it's 5-second time penalty after 4 times. It's a 10-second after 5 times. And then it just rinses and repeats throughout the race. Well, that's a lot worse. That's a lot more detrimental to your race than just staying within the white lines and being a tad bit slower. But the only thing that makes you slower than a black and white flag and track limits, penalties, stuff like that, is if you drive a Haas. If you drive a Haas, then you might as well just take those penalties and run with them, because you don't stand a chance, buddy. Within the race, Nico Hülkenberg, he actually had engine issues. Surprise, surprise, a Ferrari engine blew up. Who would have thought, right? They never do that. They're very reliable, very quick. Best car in the grid, Haas.
Never forget last year here at this very track, you had a Ferrari engine catch on fire, and then a Haas car who was driving a Ferrari engine who, like, at the end of the race said, I was scared for my life that it was going to blow up at any minute. Like, and here we are a year later.
And it does the exact same shit. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg, he tried to pull over, but obviously his fucking engine was on fire, so he pulled over, and then a virtual safety car comes out. We said earlier, Yuki Tsunoda had a full safety car come out for him going into the gravel that didn't go on the track, and he got out of it. So why the fuck do we have a VSC for a car that's literally disabled, just off the track? It's on fire, and they have to get a crane or whatever to move it out there. Like, this is not consistent. It doesn't make any sense at all. But regardless, that was about the middle of the race where people were using that to get tires, that kind of thing. If it's not one thing with Haas, it's another. I said last episode, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. Talking about Kevin Magnussen, the other driver for Haas. Well, Nick De Vries, the other driver for AlphaTauri, decided to push Kevin Magnussen off the track right into the gravel. No safety car was called, thankfully, but it's like the back 6, 7. What the fuck are they doing?
And if I'm not, I know De Vries was one involved in Canada. Was it De Vries and K-Mag as well that went off together, or was it De Vries and Hülkenberg? It's De Vries and K-Mag. That's what I thought. I was like, it's the same.
I forgot about that.
Tangled. Yeah, just off into the groundhog gopher hole.
Yeah, that was in Canada where De Vries drove it up the inside and then cut K-Mag off, and then they had to like do the 12-point turn, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're just, I don't know, like they're not even having like a mid-off. They're just trying to see who's worse of a team at this rate.
If we put the F1 highlights to the Full House theme song, like that would be the Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, like twins running around, is literally just De Vries and K-Mag off on their own thing.
If we're doing TV theme songs, K-Mag and De Vries definitely, they both get Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David.
Yeah.
Like they're those two, or we might as well jump into Dumb and Dumber, and you could just you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world, and it's just both of them. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? You guys, De Vries, I agree, Pat. You said De Vries is probably not going to be in F1 next year. You're 100% correct. There's
Yes.
no shot. I don't know if Danny Ric takes a spot or what, but he ain't going to be there. Kevin Magnussen, luckily, can qualify. Granted, he doesn't finish a race because his ship blows up, but he can actually put in qualifying times, get into Q3s, top 10s sometimes. So,
yeah, the debate or like news that come out like this week or the week of the Austrian Grand Prix, like right before it, was that Helmut Marko. It's kind of the whole Bob Kraft, Bill Belichick, Tom Brady incident of Helmut Marko was dead set on Nick DeVries because look what he did in his one start with Williams at Monza whenever he replaced Alex Albon. Christian Horner and Franz Tost were like, we don't agree. We think Mick Schumacher would be best. And Helmut Marko said, absolutely not. Look at what he did in Monza, which what Helmut Marko failed to realize is that Williams is really good on these straights.
mm-hmm.
I say really good for a Williams is
For
like
a back marker.
Yeah, for a back marker, they're pretty good on the straights. Monza is just one big long straight with a couple of long curves and then another straight. So it's like his one race. Yes, he got points. Cool. Alex Albon, he got I think 10th. Alex Albon would have been 6th if he had been on that one. But Helmut Marko just was determined on that, and so I don't think Nick will be around after this year. Who knows? Maybe we see Mick back in. Helmut's also was reasoning that he's got too much Ferrari blood in him for us. So,
I mean, I understand that part based off of his dad, and he is in the Ferrari Academy. He drove for Haas, which is a Ferrari affiliate, and now that he moved over to Mercedes as a reserve driver. Who knows if Mick is going to be driving next year or not? But I do have a question for Pat. Your second favorite driver, for real, second favorite driver, Checo. Dude, he's not looking good. He's been struggling in qualies and race finishes. Well, during the race in the Austrian Grand Prix, Checo, I guess, forgot how DRS detection zones work. What was going on with him and Carlos Sainz?
It's super. I don't know if he's just gone full smooth brain or what. I know like Austria is really weird because of the way its DRS zones are structured. And so you have the DRS detection point at turn 1, and then you get DRS all the way down the first straight, or I guess second, up into turn 3. And then you immediately are going to get DRS right after that, where normally most drivers are smart enough to say, okay, well, I just won't quite pass you until I really need to. And they'll get right behind the other driver and then use DRS to make the pass and make it stick for the rest of the lap. And Checo's just going full donkey mode, trying to fight Carlos Sainz, who's in a much slower car, and would just pass him with DRS with plenty of space. And then Carlos would get DRS right after that and then take the place back for, I don't even know how many laps it was. It was like 7 to 10 laps or something.
It was 4 laps where Checo was in striking distance, and then he would reach the detection zone, and then he would still try to pass Carlos. He'd pass Carlos before the detection zone. Carlos would fight back with DRS, and then they'd just do it again. And they did that for 4 or 5 laps. I believe it was closer to 4, but it was like,
dude, it seemed like an eternity from my end. Even
the announcers called out Checo. They're like, well, Max knew on the first lap that if I guess the third lap, because you have to wait 2 laps after the race starts, whatever. But he's like, on the first lap that he was able to use DRS, he waited to pass Charles Leclerc till after the detection zone. And then within 3 turns, he was a second and a half ahead of him. It's like, and then Checo had no idea.
I mean, it's like in Saudi Arabia, they used to have essentially 2 DRS zones, and so people would wait until between them to finally make the overtake. And this track, they can't change it because of the way the track's structured. And I don't know, maybe Checo was too busy eating crayons or something in his car, or he saw a butterfly on his steering wheel. But I mean, it's just common racing sense. Like I do when I play F1. Like it's super simple, and I just don't get it with the guy.
Go the
anymore.
wrong way and wreck people.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got little Lakitu picking him out of the water and stuff like that. Like
Jesus. Well, I mean, when it rains, it pours for Checo. I mean, at least Checo had the fastest lap of the race. Well, until Max decided to take that shit from him too.
God, dude.
It's the cockiest thing I've seen. Like it's so good too because when he pulls it off, it's fantastic.
So basically, what happened was on lap 70, the race is lap 69. The race is 71 laps long. Nice. On lap 69, Max radios in, can we pit? Let's go for the fastest lap. Well, his engineers were no, negative. That's too much risk. It's just for 1 point. We're not doing it. Max said, come on. Let's do it.
Well, I prefer to box.
Yeah. What's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean? Let's do it. Well, they did it. Max put on soft tires, and lap 70, he got his outlap going. Keep in mind, this is the race. He started 24 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc was in second, obviously. And a pit stop normally takes around 20 seconds. So it was a good bit of risk. Like, they should not have done that. Well, they did it, and Max ended up setting the fastest lap.
Yeah.
He took that shit from Checo. I mean, Checo's Red Bull's Make-A-Wish kid right now. He needs that. He needs that point. Come on. You guys should at least here's your prize. God. Come on, dude.
Max is like Thanos at the end of the Avengers at the post-credit scenes where he's just like, at the very first Avengers movie, whenever like Loki, he sends Loki to go try and do something and they can't do it, and they just see Thanos going, getting up from his chair going, I'll do it myself. Like, that's literally what Max is doing right now.
It's a shame because there was no need to get the full sweep of the weekend. Like, the dude won the sprint race, so there's 8 points right there.
He pole sitter for the race, pole sitter for the sprint, won the sprint. I believe led every lap of the sprint, if I'm not mistaken.
Of the sprint, yes, not of the real race.
Yeah, and his streak of, I think, like 248 consecutive laps ended when he pitted and Charles Leclerc took the lead at this race, and then still got fastest lap win. I mean, that is almost as perfect of a weekend as you can get. Only way better if he led every lap of the race.
Yeah, it was a shame for Checo. Dude was like curled up at home. His little mamacita on his side. Like, why couldn't they have just let me get the fastest lap?
That's the old Simpsons. Like, stop. He's already dead.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's okay, sweetheart. You'll get the next one. Well, we'll cover that in our second part of this doubleheader series. But for this first part, let's finish this thing out before I get sued by Checo. The podium finish. So that was pretty much it that happened with the rest of the race. The podium ended up being, like we said, Max, Charles Leclerc, and Checo. Well, if you guys don't remember from last episode, we do predictions at the end of the race for the next race, right? Well, I made the stipulation no one could pick Max anymore. So now you're picking the next highest driver to finish, but you can't pick someone who's already been picked. Well, Chandler went first last episode. And Chandler, who'd you pick?
Fernando Alonso, a normally respectable P5, but where Fernando's been earlier in the year, kind of a but. Yeah.
Yep. So Chandler picked Fernando Alonso, and Patrick, who did you pick?
I picked Charles Leclerc, who I don't know who someone in this chat said was a trash pick.
It was a garbage pick. There was no reason Ferrari had any promise to do what they did.
It was a garbage pick, but it came true.
It did. So we'll get there.
I told you it was spicy.
Shake it easy, okay? Well, so Chandler picked Fernando, Pat picked Charles, I picked Lewis Hamilton. I thought I had the best pick. I'm like, easy money. I'm about to pick first for the upcoming race. Well, luckily for you guys, we've already seen the British Grand Prix. So we're not going to pick that one. Tune into the next episode, the British Grand Prix episode, to figure out who we pick for the race after that. But anyways, congratulations, Patrick. You won the picks for this week with Charles Leclerc finishing second. Chandler came in second with Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Thanks. Appreciate it. Anyways,
we know the car is bad. Just shut up and end the podcast.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Appreciate it. Anyways, guys, this is Figuring Out the Formula from the Austrian Grand Prix. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to watch the second part of the double header episode. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe at Figuring Out the Formula. Thanks.